Welcome to another deep dive. This one's a little different. We're going deep on one single motivational speech.
Oh, interesting.
It's kind of like, getting a glimpse into someone's personal philosophy, how they think about bouncing back, growing as a person, and finding meaning in life.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. It's a unique opportunity to uncover some of those recurring themes.
Totally. And see how they tie everything together, different ideas and experiences. And get this, the speaker even mentions they weren't feeling great while recording, like under the weather.
Oh, wow. Makes you wonder, why even push through?
Right.
Yeah.
But that leads to a really interesting point about commitment.
Absolutely. It really highlights the idea that showing up consistently, even when you're not feeling it, that's a key part of success.
It's like, got to keep going. Right.
Yeah. Reminds me of The War of Art, that book by Stephen Pressfield. He talks about resistance.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
We all face those battles within ourselves, those urges to procrastinate. Just give up.
Totally. We've all been there.
Yeah, and the speaker's saying we can overcome that by setting those non-negotiables, so things we commit to no matter what.
And they use a pretty unexpected example. Don't laugh, but it's about dishes.
The dishes.
Yeah, like never leaving dishes in the sink.
Oh, okay. I see where this is going.
What's interesting is how this everyday thing, becomes this metaphor for momentum.
Right. It's about small actions, consistently, that lead to those bigger results.
Like they even compare it to a snowball, right? Rolling down a hill, getting bigger, and turning into an avalanche.
Exactly. And that's a great visual, right? Because, how do we take those small actions and actually achieve big goals?
Right. How do we make that happen?
Well, the speaker, they use another fascinating visual. This one's a jar, but it's filled with millions of these green marbles.
Okay, marbles, I'm listening.
So the marbles, they represent the daunting odds we often face.
Yeah, we've all felt that, right?
Totally. But the speaker argues that those initial numbers, they shouldn't scare us. We should just focus on replacing those green marbles with red ones.
Red ones, what do those represent?
Well, each red marble, it's a step towards your goal. And as you replace those green marbles, you're shifting those odds.
Okay, so it's not about just getting lucky, it's about taking action, creating your own probability.
Exactly. And that ties into another key point, how we handle challenges. The speaker actually shares a story about getting frustrated with their apartment lease renewal.
Oh, relatable.
So relatable. It's a great example of how we tend to personalize neutral events. That lease renewal wasn't a personal attack.
Right.
But their initial reaction, it was totally fueled by that perception.
Yeah, it's easy to take things personally.
It is. And they emphasize taking that step back and recognizing that challenges, they're rarely personal.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's about choosing how we view things.
Yes. But does that mean we should always try to detach our emotions from what's happening? What about those situations that are genuinely unfair?
That's a great point.
Well, the speaker isn't saying we should suppress our emotions. It's more about choosing how we respond.
Okay, choosing our response. I like that.
Right. They emphasize that two things can be true at the same time.
Okay, like in that lease situation.
Exactly. So the office could have totally messed up their procedures. Andy, the speaker, could still be responsible for their own reaction.
So it's about owning that part.
Yes. It's about recognizing our agency.
Yeah.
Choosing how we respond.
So it's a balance, acknowledging the situation, but taking responsibility for how we feel.
Exactly.
This reminds me of another point the speaker makes about a boat sailing into the sunset, leaving the past behind.
Ah, beautiful imagery.
Right. So what do you think they mean by that?
Well, it's a beautiful metaphor for embracing the unknown, right? Like imagine each day is a blank page in your story. You have the pen, you get to write it.
Oh, I like that.
It empowers you,
Yeah.
Right? Reframe those past setbacks and focus on the actions you take now to shape your future.
It's inspiring, for sure. But that journey, it's not always smooth sailing.
Definitely not.
What about those times when you feel like you're fighting against the current?
Ah, yes. The speaker, they use this recurring theme of wind.
Wind.
Yeah, to represent the forces that can propel us forward and also create resistance. They share this story about running a half marathon, first with the wind at their back, then having to turn and face that headwind.
I can imagine that's a mental challenge.
It is. But the speaker suggests we reframe that headwind. See it not as resistance, but as refreshment, support even.
Support, really?
Yeah, it's about finding value in those tough times, recognizing that even challenges can push us in the right direction.
Okay, that's a good perspective.
if we choose to see it that way.
Right, because it's not just about having a goal, it's about knowing what direction you want to go in.
Exactly. It's like that quote from Alice in Wonderland, about how if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there.
Oh, I love that quote.
Right. So the speaker advocates for simplicity, for defining our own North Star. They even tell this personal story about struggling to answer the question, who is Eddie Painter? Seems simple, right?
Yeah.
But it really highlights the importance of self-reflection.
It is easy to lose sight of who you are, I think, when you get caught up in everything.
It is. And that self-awareness, it's crucial because every choice, it involves trade-offs.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Right. Every yes is a no to something else. So defining that North Star helps us be intentional with our choices.
Make sure we're moving toward what truly matters.
Exactly.
And it takes a lot of courage, right? Because the speaker also talks about this idea of showing them who you are. It's embracing your individuality.
Absolutely. A lot of courage. It takes courage to resist conforming and choose that less traveled path.
Yeah, not easy.
It's not. They actually mentioned Oscar Wilde saying that a dangerous idea is one that challenges the status quo.
Oh, interesting.
Right. It reminds us that pursuing individuality, well, it often means embracing discomfort, pushing against those expectations.
It can be uncomfortable, but freeing, too.
Exactly. But it also requires us to be open to evolving.
Oh, that's a good point. How do we balance staying true to ourselves while also being open to new information, different perspectives?
Well, the speaker distinguishes between ideas and identity. They encourage us to hold strong beliefs, but remain open to those beliefs changing over time.
Okay, so it's not about being rigid.
Right. It's about recognizing that growth and change, those are a natural part of the journey.
And the speaker uses humor too, right? To make these ideas relatable.
Oh, definitely. Like when they contrast those limitations of the past with our freedom of expression today. You talk about quill pens and candlelight.
Right. It's funny to think about now.
It is the clever way to highlight the incredible opportunities we have now to share our perspectives, make our voices heard.
It is incredible, but that freedom comes with responsibility, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And that brings us to hope. The speaker shares a powerful story about screaming into a canyon, symbolizing that need to express our dreams even when it feels like no one's listening.
Oh, wow. That's a striking image.
It is, right? It gets you thinking.
It does. What do you think it means?
Well, I think it captures that vulnerability, the uncertainty that comes with pursuing those big dreams.
Yeah. It's about having faith in something bigger than ourselves, even when we don't see the results. The speaker connects this to the two parts of hope, believing in something better. A and D, believing in our ability to create it.
It's not just wishing, it's that combination of belief and action.
Exactly. And then get this, they use a completely different story to illustrate this same point. It's actually an experiment with rats and their ability to stay afloat.
Rats. Okay, this should be interesting.
Right. It's this thought-provoking example of how, even in those really difficult situations, seeing that path forward, holding on to hope, can make all the difference.
Okay, so hope keeps us afloat.
Right. And then, for contrast, they share a more lighthearted story about a friend who actually smashed down a wall to create a new closet.
Okay, smashing walls for closets, that's a new one.
Right. Two very different stories, but both highlighting that power of action in shaping our reality.
Okay, I'm seeing the connection. So hope without action is just a wish.
Exactly. It's about recognizing our power to shape our own lives. And this actually leads to another big idea, how we see the world through our own unique lens. The speaker uses the analogy of a telescope, suggesting that what we see through it isn't necessarily objective reality, but rather our individual interpretation, shaped by our experiences and beliefs.
It's like we're all looking at the same thing, but seeing something completely different. But if our perception is so subjective, how can we even understand each other, let alone work together?
That's a great question, and it really gets to the heart of empathy and open-mindedness. Different people are going to have different interpretations of the same event, and that's okay.
Okay, so it's not about forcing everyone to see things the same way.
Right. It's about making space for those different perspectives.
So acknowledging that our own viewpoint is just one piece of the puzzle.
Exactly. And it takes being willing to step outside of our own limited perspective and try to see things from other people's point of view.
That reminds me of that story about the lease renewal. Maybe if the speaker had tried to see things from the other person's perspective, things could have gone differently.
Yeah, it's possible. The speaker talks about how most conflicts come from a lack of understanding and empathy.
When we assume our interpretation is the only right one.
Exactly. And that creates barriers to communication and problem solving.
So it's about realizing there's more to the story than we initially see. Which reminds me of the speaker's point about challenging assumptions.
Oh yeah, how we often operate on autopilot, accepting certain beliefs without questioning them.
Right, like we just inherit these narratives.
And the speaker suggests we should be more intentional about examining those beliefs, asking, are they really serving us?
Are they based on anything real or just stuff we've never questioned?
Exactly. The speaker is challenging us to be more critical thinkers, questioning those assumptions that could be holding us back.
That makes me think about what they said about luck. They don't seem to buy the idea that luck just happens.
Yeah, they challenge the idea that luck is some external force we can't control. Instead, they say luck often favors the prepared.
So it's not about just hoping for good things to happen, it's about getting yourself ready for them.
Right. Putting yourself in a position to be lucky, developing your skills, learning new things, being open to new experiences.
So it's about taking ownership and making things happen.
Exactly, taking ownership of your life and recognizing that you have the power to shape your own destiny. And that brings us back to that idea of never giving up, even when things get tough.
That image of the little girl screaming into the canyon.
It really captures that message, right? The courage to keep going even when you face uncertainty.
It's about having that unwavering belief in yourself and your vision, even when you don't see results right away.
Yes, and the speaker emphasizes that success isn't a straight line. There will be obstacles, moments of doubt, but the ones who succeed are those who persevere.
And sometimes it's about knowing when to change your approach, adapt without losing sight of the goal. Like that analogy of the half marathon and hitting that headwind after a stretch of smooth sailing.
It is a good analogy for life's challenges. The speaker talks about seeing those challenges not as roadblocks, but as opportunities for growth.
It's about developing that resilience to bounce back and keep moving forward.
And that brings us to another important point.
Yeah.
Having that North Star, that guiding principle to help you make decisions and stay focused on what truly matters.
It's about finding that thing that gives your life direction.
Exactly. The speaker emphasizes that defining our North Star takes introspection and self-awareness.
You have to understand your values, your passions, your vision for the future.
Exactly. And then use that vision to guide your choices, making sure your actions align with your overall goals.
It's about being intentional with every decision you make.
And the speaker actually challenges us with this question. If it means something to you, is it right? It's about trusting your gut and having the courage to make decisions that align with your values.
Even if they don't fit with what everyone else expects.
Right. It's about defining success on your own terms, not letting external validation control your choices.
But with all the distractions and demands in the world, how do you stay focused on that North Star? How do you avoid those things that pull you off course?
The speaker uses this metaphor of barbarians at the gate.
Barbarians?
Yeah.
Like attacking your goals.
Yeah. To describe those forces that try to sabotage our efforts, those things that distract us,
It could be anything, right? Pressure from other people, your own negative thoughts,
or even just wanting instant gratification.
the temptation to procrastinate.
Exactly. And the speaker argues that we have to protect our time, energy, and focus.
So setting boundaries, establishing routines.
Right. Building those habits that support your long-term goals.
It's like building a fortress to protect your commitment to yourself. But does that mean we have to become inflexible, sticking to the plan no matter what?
No, not at all. The speaker actually emphasizes the importance of adaptation. They say that consistency gets us in the game, but adaptation allows us to win.
So you have to be willing to adjust, to change your approach based on what you learn and what's happening around you.
Right. Remember Einstein's definition of insanity.
Doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results.
Exactly. So it's about being willing to experiment, learn from your mistakes, and make adjustments along the way. And that leads to another interesting point, embracing wrong turns.
They actually say there are no wrong turns.
Right. Only turns not taken.
So it's about seeing those mistakes as opportunities to learn and grow.
Exactly. The speaker encourages us to see life as this grand experiment, where the goal isn't to be perfect, but to keep learning and evolving.
It's all about embracing the journey, those twists and turns that lead you to those unexpected places. Speaking of unexpected, the speaker has some really interesting thoughts on how we see the world.
Right. They argue that our reality is shaped not just by facts, but by our interpretation of those facts.
So it's not just what happens to us, it's how we see it.
Exactly. They say we live in a world of perception, not just a world of facts.
And that connects to their point about not letting ideas control us.
Yes. Have beliefs, but don't get so attached that you lose the ability to think critically.
So find that balance between conviction and being open-minded. Have the courage to stand up for your beliefs, but be willing to change your mind.
Exactly. And that brings us back to that powerful call to action. Show them who you are.
It's about expressing yourself authentically, but also challenging the status quo, right?
Yes. Questioning those norms that might be holding us back.
Being a force for positive change in the world.
Exactly. And that brings us to another important point. The power of our thoughts and beliefs. They really shape our reality.
It's like we're living in our own self-created movies.
Right. And we have the power to choose the genre, the plot, the ending.
We get to be the director of our own lives.
Exactly. Choose those stories that inspire us and motivate us. But how do we do that? How do we identify those beliefs that are holding us back?
Yeah, and replace them with more empowering ones.
The speaker emphasizes self-reflection and honest self-assessment.
You have to be willing to take a hard look at yourself.
Exactly. It's about taking the time to examine your thoughts and beliefs and ask yourself, are these helping me or are they holding me back?
So it's about taking that step back, observing those thoughts, and recognizing those patterns that might be tripping us up.
Absolutely. And that takes us back to not letting fear control us. They share a story, walking to their apartment, feeling intimidated by those stairs.
Yeah, I remember that.
They realized they were making it a bigger deal in their head than it actually was.
We do that, right? Build things up in our minds.
All the time. And so they encourage us to focus on one step at a time. Trust yourself. Figure things out as you go.
Break it down. Make it manageable.
Exactly. And that reminds me of the boat sailing into the sunset. Leaving the past behind, choosing your own path.
Oh, that's a good connection. It is about letting go and moving forward.
Right. And it connects to the idea of each day being a blank page. You get to write your own story.
It's a fresh start every day.
And don't forget about the wind, that recurring theme. Remember the headwind during the half marathon?
Oh, yeah. How it can be both resistance and a driving force.
Exactly. It's all about how we choose to navigate those forces.
And speaking of navigation, that brings us back to defining what matters. Like that Alice in Wonderland quote, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there.
Oh, I love that quote. And the speaker, they really emphasize defining your North Star. They even talk about struggling to answer that simple question, who is Eddie Painter?
Yeah. It's funny how the simplest questions can be the hardest.
Right. But it highlights the importance of self-reflection. It's key to knowing your values, making choices that align with them.
So we can be intentional about where we're going.
Exactly. And then there's the idea of trade-offs,
Yeah.
Every yes is a no to something else.
You can't do it all.
Nope. So that North Star helps us be more deliberate with those choices.
Making sure we're moving towards what matters most.
Exactly. And then there's that call to action. Show them who you are. It takes a lot of courage to embrace your individuality and pursue that unique path.
It does. To resist conforming, to choose that path less traveled.
It reminds me of Oscar Wilde, how he said, a dangerous idea challenges the status quo.
It's about shaking things up a bit.
Right. And the speaker distinguishes between ideas and identity. It's about having those strong beliefs, but being open to them evolving.
So it's not about being rigid, it's about being willing to grow.
Exactly. And remember how the speaker uses humor to bring it all together, like contrasting past limitations with today's freedom of expression, talking about quill pens and candlelight.
Oh, yeah. Such a clever way to make it relatable.
Right. And to highlight those incredible opportunities we have today to share our voices and make a difference.
It is incredible when you think about it. But as we wrap up this deep dive, it makes you think, what does it truly mean to show them who you are?
That's the big question, right? I think it's about living a life that truly reflects your values, your passions, all those unique things about you. It's about having the courage to express yourself authentically, making choices that come from your heart.
And leaving your mark on the world.
Absolutely. We all have that power.
So to our listeners, as you go out there, remember this. Your story's still being written. What adventures are waiting? What will your next chapter be?
What legacy will you leave behind? It's all up to you.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a really thought-provoking journey.
It has. I hope you enjoyed exploring these powerful ideas with us.
And we hope it inspires you to create your own extraordinary story. Finding meaning in life's journey, that kind of stuff. And you sent us this motivational speech transcript, and wow, it really makes you think. One of the things that just jumped out at me was this idea of the illusion of choice.
Yeah, the speaker uses that phrase to talk about the actions that you just, you can't get around, right? The non-negotiables if
Yeah.
you're trying to achieve a goal. And I thought that was so fascinating. It really makes you look at those areas in your life where you're giving yourself too many outs. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. And the speaker even talks about pushing through to actually record the speech, even though they weren't feeling well.
Right.
They were sick.
Right.
And that just, I don't know, it just really resonated with me because it's such a relatable example. We've all been there. Showing up even when you just don't want to.
Absolutely. It really shows you the psychology behind it all.
Yeah.
You know, when you start to let yourself make exceptions, even little tiny ones. It's like you're chipping away at your foundation, at your commitment. And then it's just so much easier to justify, you know, making those exceptions again and again. And then all of a sudden consistency is gone. It's out the window.
It's like those cheat days that turn into cheat weeks and then
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the speaker really argues that if you want to make real changes, you have to have those non-negotiables, the things that you just don't compromise on, no matter what. And those are the bedrock of any meaningful pursuit. So I'm curious, thinking about your own life, are there places where a no excuses mindset could help you?
Oh, that's a great question for everyone listening. It really does make you stop and think about, you know, where you might be slacking, letting things slide. But the speech doesn't just talk about consistency, right? There's also this emphasis on adaptation.
Absolutely. The speaker makes this great analogy of getting in the door and then what happens after that.
Right.
You got to figure out the space. So consistency is how you get in the game, but adaptation is how you actually play the game well.
I love that. That's a really good way to put it. And I like how the speech compares personal growth to this idea of, you know, like laying bricks, building a path forward one step at a time. So each step is building on the last. But we have to be able to adapt our approach, you know, based on the terrain, what we're facing.
You got it. It's not enough to just lay bricks. We have to make sure that we're laying them in a way that takes us where we actually want to go, to our destination.
Yeah.
So adaptation is about learning to navigate the obstacles. You know, there are always going to be obstacles, and being able to correct course when we need to. So that raises another question. How do we know when we need to adapt versus just sticking with it? Stay the course.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's tough. It's tricky. The speaker seems to be saying that it's about being able to tell the difference between hitting a real obstacle versus, you know, just wanting to avoid being uncomfortable. So it's pushing yourself to grow, but also knowing when to change gears.
Yeah, that's such an important point. It's like this constant calibration. We're always adjusting our efforts, trying to find that sweet spot between pushing ourselves and recognizing when a new approach is called for. And the speaker actually gives this really fascinating example of this. Remember that part about the American Revolution? The speaker brings that up and talks about how, you know, the founding fathers didn't just get lucky with the French supporting them.
Oh, yeah.
It was years and years of planning and strategizing, building relationships, you know, proving that they were serious, committed to the cause.
That's true. They created the conditions for what we might call luck. But like on the surface, it just looks like luck. Like they were in the right place at the right time, but they had to like put themselves in that position right to catch those opportunities.
Exactly. Yeah. The speaker's saying that preparation is a huge part of what we call luck. It's not about, you know, sitting back and just waiting for something to happen. It's about you being proactive.
Yeah.
You shape your own destiny.
But isn't there some element of just being in the right place at the right time? Like even if you prepare like crazy, sometimes things work out and sometimes they don't.
Right, yeah. But I think the speaker would say that the more prepared you are, the more likely you are to see those opportunities and grab them. When they do show up, it's about maximizing your chances, not about controlling everything, because you can't control everything.
Right, okay, I get that. So it's almost like preparation is like a lens. It helps you see things you might otherwise miss. Speaking of seeing things, the speech also talks about hope. That rat experiment was crazy.
Yeah, the one where they gave the rats a sense of hope and they swam so much longer.
Yeah.
It just shows you how powerful our beliefs can be, how much they can influence our ability to keep going when things get tough.
And then it made me think of the story about the speaker's friend who just went and smashed down a wall. Yeah.
To make a new closet.
Just like took a sledgehammer to it.
I know. Both of those examples are really about how we have more power than we think to change things.
Right. And the speaker's final message really hits on that. They say the most important day of our lives is today, because it's that connection between who we were and who we can be.
It's a really great way to put it. It's a call to action.
Right.
We got to take responsibility for the choices we make and realize that we can shape our future, even though we can't change the past.
It's about focusing on what you can control. Your actions, your mindset, how you respond to challenges, because you know they're going to come.
Okay, so we've talked about consistency,
Yeah.
adaptation, the role of luck, the importance of hope. There's this other thread that runs through the speech, too, about defining success on your own terms.
Right. The speaker says that we often fall into this trap of comparing ourselves to others. We use these metrics that may not even matter to us, you know, to what we really want. It's like we're all playing different games, but we're using the same scoreboard. And that can be so discouraging, because you're always comparing yourself to these standards that don't even line up with what you actually care about.
Yeah. And the speech is challenging us to ask ourselves, what does success really mean to me? You as an individual. What are your goals? Your aspirations?
I love that. It's about figuring out your own definition of success, not letting someone else tell you what it should be. It's about feeling good about yourself, not about needing other people to approve of you.
Yeah. It's about knowing yourself, understanding your values, your strengths, what really motivates you. And once you know that stuff, you can build a life that reflects who you truly are.
Right, and the speech also says that figuring yourself out is an ongoing process. It's not like you just figure it out once and you're done. As we grow and learn, our ideas about success might change too, and that's totally fine. It's about being open to new things and being willing to adjust your path as you go.
It's not about reaching a destination. It's a journey of exploration and growth. It's about embracing the unknown, having faith that you'll figure it out.
And the speaker doesn't sugarcoat it either. They talk about the challenges we face.
Right. It's not always going to be easy.
Like that part about the barbarians at the gate, that really stuck with me.
Yeah, it's like this powerful metaphor for all the things that can sabotage us.
Inside and out.
Totally. It's distractions, negativity, self-doubt. It's all those things that are always trying to pull you back into old habits, old patterns.
Because the speaker is also saying we have the power to fight back, like build up our defenses, strengthen our discipline, stay focused on where we want to go, even when it's hard. We can focus on building those non-negotiables, those habits and routines that help us reach our goals.
Yeah, and that goes back to having that strong foundation. When you have those core principles in place, those habits that are just part of your everyday life, you're much better equipped to deal with pressure and stay on track.
It's like having this inner compass that guides you, even when everything around you is chaotic. But how do you know if you're on the right path? What if you're just being stubborn and calling it perseverance?
Yeah, that's where self-awareness comes in again. You've got to be honest with yourself. Ask yourself the tough questions. Are your actions lining up with your values? Are you moving towards your goals?
And if the answer's no, then maybe it's time to reevaluate things.
Right.
Maybe you need to adjust your course, or maybe you need to change your destination altogether.
Exactly. The speech wants us to approach life with curiosity, a willingness to learn. See our experiences as information, data points. That can help us make better decisions.
And be open to feedback, both from ourselves and from other people. And be willing to make changes when you need to.
Right. On the spot. Course correction.
The speech also talks about understanding why we struggle, like the real reasons behind our struggles. A lot of times we focus on surface level stuff, like getting better equipment or finding the perfect environment. But the real problem might be something deeper.
Yeah, it's like trying to fix a leaky faucet by just wiping up the water instead of fixing the pipes. The speaker wants us to dig deeper, ask the hard questions, be honest about what's really holding us back.
It's like being your own detective, investigating those patterns, those beliefs that are working against you.
Exactly. And you often find that the toughest battles are the ones we're having with ourselves, in our own minds. We overthink things, second-guess ourselves, and let fear stop us from doing what we want to do.
But the speech is reminding us that we can break free. We can challenge those thoughts, those beliefs that are holding us back, and take back control. It's about recognizing that we have both light and darkness inside of us, and they're both important parts of who we are.
And it's about choosing which one you want to feed, which one you want to let guide you, shape your reality.
The speech also talks about embracing what makes you unique, recognizing that there's no one right way to live your life.
Right. It's not one size fits all.
I love that part where they talk about how we compare ourselves to others, and we use these standards that don't even apply to what we want.
Totally. The speaker reminds us that we're all on our own journey, and your path is just as important and meaningful as anyone else's. It's about being proud of who you are and going after what makes you happy and fulfilled.
So it's about letting go of those comparisons and focusing on being the best version of yourself on your own terms.
Exactly.
Okay, so speaking of going after what you want, there's this cool idea about how we can actually build our ideal reality.
Oh yeah, the speaker uses that analogy of building something brick by brick.
Yeah.
They're saying it's not about some magic trick. It's not going to happen overnight. You got to show up consistently, even when it feels boring or unimportant. It's the little things, the small actions that add up over time.
Yeah, it's about believing in the process, even when you don't see results right away, and having faith in yourself and in your ability to keep going no matter what.
And it's about celebrating those small wins, those moments when you push yourself outside your comfort zone or you hit a milestone, or you just show up when you really didn't feel like it.
Those little wins are so important. They keep you going, give you momentum, remind you that you can do more than you thought you could. But what about the times when you make mistakes? When things don't work out the way you planned? The speech talks about that too.
Yeah, there's this part where the speaker talks about like those wrong turns, those detours, and how we should look at them differently. They're saying that even the stuff that feels like a failure can teach us things.
Yeah.
And they can create opportunities that we never even saw coming.
Yeah, and they tell this story about how they were experimenting in their work and making mistakes, actually. And it led to some of their biggest breakthroughs. It's like those unexpected turns actually put them on a better path, even though it wasn't what they planned.
Exactly. And just makes you think, we tend to see setbacks as like the end of the road. But maybe they're actually leading us somewhere new.
Yeah, maybe.
The speech is encouraging us to, change how we think about failure. It's not a full stop. It's just a comma.
Yeah.
Like a pause before the next sentence.
Okay, I like that.
It's a chance to learn and adapt. And maybe even find something better than what you were looking for in the first place.
Right. It's like they say, sometimes you win and sometimes you learn.
That's it.
It reminds me of this other point the speaker makes about how we see things, like how our perception shapes our reality. They use that analogy of a telescope. It can help you see things more clearly, but it can also limit your view.
It's like that saying, you don't see the world as it is, you see it as you are.
Oh, yeah.
All of our experiences, our beliefs, our biases, they're like filters. They change how we see everything around us.
Yeah. And there's that part where they talk about looking at a sunset and a palm tree and a boat on the horizon, like the same scene.
Right.
And they say how those things could mean totally different things to different people, depending on their experiences.
Yeah, it shows how our perceptions aren't necessarily the truth. It's a call to be more open-minded.
Yeah.
And to realize that there are many ways to see the same thing.
It really makes you realize how important it is to question your own assumptions and be willing to see things from different perspectives.
And to get out of your comfort zone. Ask questions. Be curious about the world. That's where learning and growth happen, when you're open to new ideas and different ways of thinking.
Well, this deep dive has definitely given me a lot to think about. The speech is so full of wisdom about how to live with more intention and purpose, and how to be more resilient.
It reminds us that we can achieve incredible things. And the only real limits are the ones we put on ourselves.
Before we go, I want to leave everyone listening with a question, something to think about. What wrong turns have you taken in your life that actually taught you something valuable or led to some unexpected opportunity?
Yeah, sometimes those detours take us exactly where we're supposed to be.
I love that. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. And as you continue on your own journey, remember to embrace those detours, learn from your mistakes, and believe in yourself and your ability to create a future that's even better than you can imagine.